Hello! Welcome back to the Long Distance Love Bombs podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg, and today's guest, I've done over 100 episodes, and every once in a while, a guest comes around and it just clicks. There's a connection, there's a brilliance, there's an eloquence, and in these circumstances, I kind of sit back and just enjoy the ride, so to speak. Rainier Wylde is one of those people. You will listen to this man talk about relationships and life and pain and vulnerability in such an eloquent and poetic and beautiful manner that you will just I just kind of sat back and just took in his brilliance. I think you're going to love it. He's a writer, he's a teacher, he was a former professor, he's a former psychotherapist, he's lived countless lives, and he talks very magically about each of them. So without further ado, Rainier Wylde. This episode is brought to you by Cured Nutrition. Cured is the leader in CBD supplementation with an entire line of products designed to take your everyday life to its ultimate potential. Their daily staples are formulated with an in-house clinical herbalist, which has taken the traditional CBD regimen to an entirely new level of optimization. If you're anything like me, you like waking up feeling good and living well. You've probably toyed around with the idea of finding healthy alternatives to jumpstart your morning. Personally, it's why I start my day with Cured Rise, which is their focus supplement. It's a powerhouse blend of functional mushrooms like lion's mane and cordyceps, broad-spectrum CBD, and powerful adaptogens. It gives me clean, clear, and sustained energy without any of the caffeine jitters or crash that I get with coffee. After I get going, Aura is next. It's another blend of functional mushrooms, CBD, and adaptogens, but it's got a twist. We all know how important it is to sustain our immunity nowadays, and this covers all of my bases. The vitamin D, prebiotics, crucial antioxidants are delivered straight to the gut, which is the foundation of our emotional and physical health. Am I right? Second brain. It's where the majority of our serotonin production and immune function begin, or it keeps everything in check, performing at its best, so I have one less thing to worry about, and I obviously cannot forget Zen. I use it every night. It is certainly why it has become Cure's #1 selling relaxation and sleep product. You know the long nights spent tossing and turning? Yeah, not with this stuff. It has ingredients like reishi mushroom, ashwagandha, magnesium, passion flower, broad spectrum CBD, so thankfully, restlessness is something of the past. Cured Nutrition products are your answer for a daily dose of health. Visit curednutrition.com. That's CURED nutrition.com. Be sure to use the coupon code LOVEBOMBS, and at the checkout you will save 10% off your order. All right, man. Rainier Wylde. Is it Wild or is it Wildy?
It is all wild. Yeah.
Rainier Wylde. Welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here, man.
Yeah.
Now, is it Jeremiah or Jeremy? How do you want me?
Yeah, it's a hard J. Jeremy. Yeah. Well, we're off to a flying start. Yeah. So, Rainier, for people who are listening right now and have no idea who you are or what you do, they've never seen your name before. What's your deal? How do you describe yourself?
Like, who the heck are you, man? Like,
yeah,
what are you about?
I mean, I could try to describe you, but I often find that the guest is more accurate.
Yeah, and it is funny that you say that. I almost always, when people ask me this, I'm always sort of left with wanting to know what they think I do, inevitably, but I won't. I won't turn that on you.
I actually, I could do it. I wrote down 3 words that I thought was like kind of cool. So I described you to myself as a mysterious Midwestern mystic.
Oh my God. First of all, I love the alliteration. And second of all, I love all of the descriptors that you chose. although I'm not in the Midwest, I live in the Pacific Northwest. I did grow up in the Midwest for a good bit. The word mystery seems accurate. I would describe myself as a teacher and a writer, and I think those are the closest verbs, even though they're nouns, but the closest verbs that I know to assign what it is that I do on a given day. And on any given day, I'm writing about waking up. I'm writing about connecting to life in its fullest sense, trying to embody our purpose, being whole, living not in secondhand ways, not as Xerox copies of being humans, but as people who are fully and deeply alive. And I teach people, whether in workshops or groups, retreats, or one-on-one, how to walk away from the noise, how to walk away from the games, and to step into the perils and possibilities of reality as it is. So, boy, I feel like I took the stairs on that one instead of giving you my elevator spiel, but that's really a lot of what I do.
I love it. I think it's great, man. I'm into it. Yeah, one of the lines that I saw on your website that I would love to explore more, because I feel like it's a succinct synopsis of all of that, is you have this line about discovering the real beneath the role. Like the role that we play, the identity, the masks, the expectations, the shoulds, like how we fit in, and then trying to peel that back to see the realness that's there. It sounds like that's what you're about.
I think the reality that most of us face is a profound sense of confusion in any given moment, like a profound sense of misdirection, like what end is up? What way is north? What do I want? What's my purpose? Where am I going? What's better than this? And we've got, 30 competing voices at any given time. And I'm not even talking about the voices that are out there or the talking heads. It's just our own talking head. And it's hard to know sometimes what's what and who's who. And I think that in reality, we are sort of like a bus full of characters, each competing for the steering wheel, right? And it's like there's 30 people on there, and a couple of them have ideas about exactly where this bus should go. And then the rest are mostly okay with letting, those two steer us. But then every once in a while, they rise up and try and take the wheel over. And that's when things go terribly wrong. What I inevitably feel is that those are almost always constructed distortions of reality. Those are, as I said earlier, kind of Xerox copies. We didn't create them. We didn't make them up. We're an amalgam of other people's choices and consequences and circumstances and genetic coding and conditioning. And under that is buried this still small voice, this essence. We might call it inner wisdom or a spark. And we all have access to that inner wisdom, but we so rarely access it, right? The world is the way it is because we so rarely access that still small voice. So what I help people do is stop being a cover-up job, right? Because most of us are, in fact, a cover-up job. We're simply buried under that. So you hear about people say, I help excavate your sense of self. And I think that sounds good. It's a whole lot more organic than that at the end of the day, right? Yesterday, I was interacting with someone who I've mentored and taught for quite a while. And he was saying, what would it be like to just wake up and be myself? And I said, well, you do, right? There's no question. You already are yourself. In fact, even this thing that you're calling an imposter is yourself. And we just get terribly muddled And so I think part of what I try and do is help clear away those cobwebs for people so that they're not muddled, so that the voice that is still and small is not drowned out by all the voices. Yeah.
You caught me there taking a sip of tea. But yeah, that was that was brilliant, man. And I largely relate and agree with that. And one thing that came up was my friend Padilla describes being a fan of the moment when you realize that you're awake and before you've downloaded the identity, the fears, the to-do list, the life, the like, all of it. And she does this practice where she tries to stay in that kind of liminal space between for as long as she can in the morning. And my interpretation of that was that she's trying to cultivate exactly what you described, which is like, this is actually me before I've downloaded the program that I'm running currently that I'm supposed to use, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. I mean, this seems like a very simple idea, but also one that is extremely powerful and a complex project.
It is simple, and it's so complicated that there's really only a few times that we actually are reduced down to that simplicity. I think post-coitus, I think the moment right after orgasm is that for a lot of people, right? Like, especially for men who I talk to who have such difficulties in generality experiencing any sense of the present moment or that sense of connection or oneness with all that is. Men in particular seem to report that when they feel that connection, they correspond to something like emptiness. And boy, if we can think about orgasm, right, and we can think about that experience, you know, what the French call le petit mort, right, the little death, and it's like you've just had that experience. And you're empty. I mean, there is a literalness to that emptiness, but you're also empty of longing. You're not trying to get it anymore. You're not yearning. You're not trying to convince the other person. And for a split second, you're probably not even regretting it yet. Like there's no longing. There's no regrets. For a single moment, you're completely at the very edge of the event horizon. And that's how I think about it. I think of the right now as sort of a wall that we're facing at any given time, kind of like a shimmering moment, the present moment. And most of us are backed 300 or 300 feet off of it. We're just looking at it. We're commenting on it. We're thinking about it. We're processing it. We're analyzing it. We're scripting it. We're trying to assess what our best run at it is. We're trying to think about the last time we climbed that wall, or right. We're analysis. And even if we don't think we are, we probably are, right? A lot of times we think we're in our emotions or whatnot, but probably we're thinking about our emotions. And there's so much of that goes on at any given time. Really being in the present moment, which again, for most of us, is just a few times in our life. And I'm not saying that you only have sex a few times in your life, but reality, that awareness of being in the present moment really doesn't come very often. But when it does, it's like we're right up on that event horizon. We're right there. We're right at the edge. And I can think of a few moments when I've been that. One of the moments was when I told my partner that I had an affair, and that the fallout of that affair would irrevocably affect our lives. And when I communicated that, right, and in that moment, everything was out of my control. I wasn't controlling reality anymore. I couldn't actually coerce or manipulate or try and edge that sense of being. I wasn't commenting or commentating on reality anymore. I was suddenly there. The decisions were ahead of me. I couldn't actually predict them accurately. I had let go of the reins. And I think sometimes we're in those moments where we roll the dice and reality is so in front of us that we can't even script it anymore. We're not able to predict what's next. And that is a beautiful moment, in the sense that we've never felt so alive. And it's a terrifying moment. It's especially terrifying to that 6-year-old who runs us, right? That 6-year-old little boy or girl inside of us who didn't have the resources to be able to meet the present moment on their own, didn't have the skills to meet it, and so developed these really, really elaborate techniques of controlling, manipulating, avoiding, deflecting reality as it was to get through the door. The 6-year-old doesn't quite understand or like being up in it, and so has developed a lot of defense strategies and coping mechanisms to avoid that. But really, for guys like you and me, for many of your listeners, for people who are adults, one of the basic truths is we probably do have the resources today. We just don't know it. So what are your resources for meeting reality as it is? And can you coax yourself into that place where you're no longer contriving life? Right. I used to go into podcasts like this. This is such a funny story. I went on a podcast with a mutual friend of ours, and I had every answer to any potential question written out on like 5 Word documents on my laptop in front of me. And he would ask a question and I would like shuffle through what answer like I should give. But what's so funny about that is I think that was just a natural visual extension of how I've been living my life. How many of us live our lives. We've got these scripts, we've got these pretty massaged answers in any given moment that we can go to about how to live. And one of the things that I find so galling, so absolutely galling about the human experience, and you know this with a psychological background, but I think most people kind of know this, is like, if a human is put in a crisis, they've got like 3 or 4 options, right? Like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And fawn's like a new one coming on strong. Like I remember when our mutual friend Dallas Hartwig referenced that. I was like, come on, like what is that? Like fawn, give me a break. But like 3 or 4 options at best. Like the vast scope of the human condition, of human potential, of human possibility, and any given moment is boiled down to like 3 options. That's ridiculous. And that shows me how scripted we are. Really, we have so many more possibilities if we would let go and step into the event horizon and meet reality as it is. For most of us, that comes in the form of a crisis. That's like where we are when we step into the present. And I certainly know that's true of me.
Bro, I don't even know where to take this wild ride that is your brain, but I loved all of that. I just want you to keep talking. I feel like I'm watching a TED Talk right now. Like, this is good. This is a good TED Talking.
I was reading my script, and yeah. I just, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you chose that Word document to answer that question. But so you've touched on like this huge idea, which I come across very often and frequently in clients is like letting go, right? Is like, I just can't let it go. Or I want to let it go. How do I let it go? What do you have to say about that rabbit hole that I've just presented you?
Well, and just to clarify, when you say let it go, you know, you can take that a couple of ways. Sometimes I hear, I can't let the past go, right? Like I can't let what happened to me go. Mm. Like I can't let that traumatic experience, I can't let that grievance, I can't let that moment that happened to me go. And sometimes I can't roll the dice. I can't step forward. And oftentimes those thoughts are really conjoined. Like I'm so affected by what happened to me in the past that I can't, in fact, embrace what's directly ahead of me. And that makes so much sense, right? That we're so conditioned to look out for the punch from the right side of our face that we miss the left cross, right? That's coming, right? We're just completely used to and conditioned to look out for the hits that we've seen along the way. And that's that scriptedness I'm talking about, right? And you see that, you know, the book American Gods kind of highlights this in a funny story that the author presents of an ex-con who gets out, and he's really learned this great lesson of like challenging anyone who insults him, right? And he gets into the airport and he feels like the lady who's taking his ticket is insulting him. And he gets in her face and he says, "Are you insulting me?" And she's like, "Hey, buddy, you're off the plane." And he starts yelling at her and really challenging her again, just like he would in prison. And he gets not only taken out of the airport, but then eventually he ends back up in jail. Right. And this guy is talking to him. He says, well, what do you make of it? Like, what lesson did you learn there? And he's like, not to go in airports. It's like, well, that's the wrong lesson, you know? And that's how a lot of us are. Like, we learn these highly specific lessons that work in one environment where we're very successful at it. We run that play over and over and over. And then we develop it and try and apply it in other scenarios and wonder why it doesn't get results. Listen, those results probably only best worked when we were 6 years old, right? Like, turns out I developed a wonderful trend called lying. And most of us did. You know, as a developmental theorist, which is part of my background, one of the things that I find most delightful is that the human personality forms roughly between 3 to 9 years old. And one of the first movements in development, in human development, right along with the birth of the human persona, is lying. And so a parent might come to me and say, "Oh my God, little Billy, he's a horrible liar. I can't believe this." And I would say, "Well, how old is little Billy?" And they'd say, "He's 5 years old." I say, "Fantastic. That is so good. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to." And you know that he's doing good because he can imagine into what your experience is. That means he's role taking. And second of all, he's a person who has desires and wishes. And third of all, he knows that if he can convince you that he's getting what you want, but it's really what he wants, then he can actually get what he wants. He's high level functioning. This is so good. Like, turns out little Billy is on his road to developing a human personality. Most of us develop this really great tactic called lying. Turns out it stops working at some point in time. Right? We keep running this play. We call lying a lot of different things, like suppression, repression, storying. We call it, being a contrarian. We call it a lot of different things. And it's all sort of a word for the same thing, which is avoiding the truth. And so when we think about someone who's stuck, and not able to let go, not able to meet the present moment, stuck in that past, part of what's happening is they're simply not meeting reality as it is. They're not even seeing it. Oftentimes they've suppressed or repressed those experiences of themselves, those aspects of themselves so much that they don't have the resources. So part of what I do is I remind people of their innate capacity to meet the moment on its own terms, right? So you didn't learn that lesson. You learned lying, and that was a great lesson. So part of what I actually have to do is get them to tell the truth about the plays they're running, right? And so you have a guy who says, "Well, I want to settle down with a great girl, but I just can't seem to. Instead I have these one night stands. I have these relationships that are real frivolous, that are real fluff, and I just can't seem to settle down. I want to. That's what I want to be. And but God, can you help me do that?" I'm like, "Wait, I don't think you want to be that. I don't think you want to settle down. Because let's talk about what you're getting by running around and being a playboy, like by being Don Juan. Let's talk about how fantastic that is for you, right?" In fact, I'll just be very personal in a stuck moment. And I talked about this recently. But I have pursued unavailable people a lot of my life. I mean, like, I look back at the first pictures of my first girlfriend. It's like she's leaning 6 inches away and like I'm leaning into her. Couldn't have said anything better. And the truth is, I've pursued unavailability with almost every romantic partner I've been with. And unavailability comes in a lot of ways, right? Like emotional unavailability. Sure. Like I mean that. They're closed, they're locked off. I remember my ex-wife, they would say, "Well, what do you really like about her?" I'm like, she's she's an egg to crack open. I just feel like she's a treasure waiting to be found. It's like the whole of our relationship was wrapped up in this idea that one day I'm going to find, that thing that X marks the spot on. Unavailability, potential. Yeah. Unavailability comes in the form of like long distance relationships. I can honestly tell you that I think every single relationship I had ever had at one point was a long distance relationship. Well, that's funny. Like, am I not capable of dating someone down the road? Right. And now in a time of COVID, like, someone next door might as well be 1,000 miles away. So it doesn't matter. But at whatever level, I was pursuing unavailability. Not only that, but I would pursue people who were already in relationships with someone else. Right. That's even more unavailable. And not only that, I would pursue all of those things while I was in a relationship. Like, I'm also unavailable. This is fantastic. I would create like a trifecta of unavailability as an unavailable person over and over and over. And then I would wonder why it didn't work out. And it took someone saying, hey, I think that you do this, for me to go, oh, and then it got even better. Suddenly someone shone the light on me and said, oh, and I think you get a lot out of it. And I went, what? What could I possibly get out of pursuing these like, I'm miserable. I didn't know it. It was a blind spot the whole time. Turns out I'm miserable because I pursue unavailable people. And they said, no. I think you're really successful at getting what you want. What is it that I want? Well, you get to remain detached, non-disclosed, disconnected, avoidant of intimacy, and you get to blame the other person for the failed relationship. How fantastic is that? You come out looking like a gem every time, and you don't even have to be vulnerable. So this is really one of the primary tactics and techniques that we begin to use when we uncork why a person is stuck. We begin to look out of the plays that you're running in life. What are you getting out of the things that happen over and over and over? And I know someone hearing that might say like, oh, I would never choose a relationship that's exhausting, depleting, miserable, neglectful, traumatic. I would never choose that. I'm actually not saying one that you consciously choose it at all. I certainly wasn't consciously choosing to be with unavailable people. Second of all, sometimes we just reinforce old behaviors that don't even work for us anymore. We just keep doing them over and over out of habit. So I'm buying it that sometimes you're not actually doing it because it really feels good. But if we can begin to highlight what you might get out of it, what might actually be successful about what's happening, then we can create a real option for you. Like, well, sounds like that works pretty good. There's some real pros there. What are the cons, I wonder? What do you lose? And the cons are always the same, I got to tell you. They might fill out in abundant ways, but in my mind, they're always the same, aren't they? They're lack of authenticity, lack of vitality, lack of meaningful connection, right? We have lots of ways of describing that. But once we begin to see really what the benefits are, and then mirror them against what the actual consequences are, not just the cheap things, then we suddenly have a real option. And we begin to say, okay, what would it be like to learn a different course? Maybe one that we can't even imagine right now. So that's a little bit of insight into how I start to work with someone to help move them on to letting go. Really, if anything, I show them how good they've got it so they can stop protesting.
I remember reading something about that years back and thinking it was such a head fuck of like, wait,
totally.
It like just the simple idea of like, what am I getting out of this? Like, how is this helping me? What is this providing? Completely flip the script. It's like a different lens, so to speak. Like, I thought I was seeing the world, and then you go and get glasses, and it's like, oh, like there's a whole lot of clarity now that I wasn't considering before, right? But so this idea of being fully seen or being vulnerable or intimate, right? That you have to risk a certain level of exposure in order to gain the connection and love for that part of you, right? And so when you protect pieces of yourself, it feels safer, so to speak. And so we subconsciously push people away, or we choose people that we can fix so that we're better than them, or that we have the power in the relationship dynamic. Like, any insights about being more getting better at opening up, let's say, or getting, so now that you've acknowledged that you like hypothetically choose unavailable partners and that you have these things going on, what would be the next sort of practical step along the path to begin strengthening that exposure muscle, so to speak?
Well, one thought there, because this is inherently like a relational question, and I think that most of life really is ecological in the sense that it's not just us in a vacuum. It's not just us kind of in this void. We're making these decisions about who we are and what we want in relationship to others, family, friends, coworkers, colleagues, the general public, certainly lovers, right? So we're making these decisions, these assessments. We start to have these realizations about what I want, about who I am. We start to begin to think about, how do I disclose this? How do I start talking about this? And I think there's a lot of really great strategies. Like, I really do. Sometimes I'm blown away when I look at whether it's on social media or certainly the body of literature that's out there about how to get from here to there. I think, my God, people are so smart. People are so smart. But I can tell you something. I've never figured out how to get from here to there. There's only there, or maybe more importantly, there's only here. Anytime I've opened my mouth to be vulnerable, there was no degree of self-coaching or self-practice. There was no amount of prepared statements that actually made it easier to be authentic. So I'll be really candid right now. Last week, I was able to spend a wonderful 8 days on the big island of Hawaii with my partner. And we've had a hell of a ride. And part of the gift we have given each other is the gift of illusions, right? We weren't really ready to see each other for a very long time. So we colluded quite a bit. The stages of relational development kind of work like that. There's creation, where you first make contact with someone. Oh, they're so wonderful. They're so beautiful. They're so fantastic. They're the best. And there's this union, right? We begin to merge with them. We can't get enough of them. And a lot of us kind of like live for that merge that happens. We're like, oh my God, they're just like me. Which is the really exciting part, because then it means if they're so incredible and they're just like me, then me turns out to be pretty good. So that's fantastic. So union feels really good to most of us. And so creation to union, but then we start to see some red flags, like some things aren't matching up, like, well, like, where does he go every Friday night? And, what about those arguments that she's always picking? But what's so fascinating is we're so addicted to that experience of union, of merging, that we then begin a terribly prolonged phase called collusion, where we're both incredibly invested in the idea of maintaining the fantasy that we first developed in the union stage, where we're exactly like one another, right? And so we're colluding, we're illusioning together. And I think my partner and I inhabited that stage just as many people did for quite a while. It was really beautiful. I think that's actually a gift that people can give one another. And you have to fill out the stage of development that you're in. There's no getting around it. Like, you can't tell a 20-year-old to be a 70-year-old, right? He's got to be a 20-year-old. And I think relationally, you're not going to skip over this stage. It's going to happen. You're both going to be the most fantastic person. And if he says, hey, I don't want to create an illusion here, I'm not fantastic at all, she's going to say, oh my God, and he's honest, I love it, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you say at a certain stage, you're both building that wonderful castle in the clouds together. And what happens over time is that starts to fall apart. And as I kind of talked about earlier in my own relationship, it really fell apart. I hit a place that I couldn't hide anymore, where the basement of my own shadows, where I had kind of put all my junk for so long, right? Like the floor fell out and I was suddenly there, like surrounded by the shadows there in the basement. And she was there with me. She was seeing my stuff for the first time. It's like, who the hell is this? And even in that, truth came out in trickles, right? Like even in that, it was like, I couldn't actually let her into what was happening all at once. My God, like what would she see? And I look back at this last year, and one of the things my partner said to me several days ago as we were there in Hawaii together, enjoying just some incredible, just authenticity in this newer phase that we've inhabited. She said, for a couple of years there, we were talking about trust. We were talking about authenticity. We were talking about these things, but we couldn't quite muster it just yet. We didn't quite have the courage. And it came in the form of a really sharp and pointed question, as it so often does, from one of us to the other. And then that other person had a choice. It was me in that moment. I had a choice. How will I respond? Will I tell her the truth, or will I hide? Will I be radically honest in this moment, or will I? And there's no amount of self-coaching that prepares you for that. You either do or you don't. And I looked at her and I risked it all. And I won't bother you with the details, but it was very painful in that moment for both of us. I was exposed. She was suddenly seeing. No amount of preparation or soil overturning really got us into the right mood, right? Once again, you're right up in the event horizon, right? You're up in it, the present moment. You're risking it all again. What happens is that phase of collusion, the illusions dissolve. And suddenly you move to that next phase of disillusion. And for so many couples, whether this happens in the span of a few weeks or a decade or 20 years, no matter how long this series of stages of relational development occur, disillusion is often when relationships dissolve, right? It's when they fall apart. There is, however, a beautiful promise that if you see one another, if you really see one another, and you say, I am I and you are you, we are not the same. We are different. Suddenly, that is the moment that a relationship begins, and a new stage may occur called communion. Communion is the union not of two selves trying to be the same self, but rather of two selves who are their own selves, connecting. And I think that is predicated with authenticity. Your question was, any tips for getting? No, none at all. Reality is like one of those moments you don't prescribe or predict. In fact, most of our society is addicted to prescriptions. I don't mean pharmaceutically. I just mean like we're all looking for the simple dummies guide here. We're looking for the 4 steps towards healthy relationships. I even just gave you a roadmap with 4 clear stages laid out, right? Like that's what we want. The reality is life is messy. So there's no bridge. There's no bridge from here to there. There's just there, or there's just here. And you have to be willing to open your mouth to risk it. And it's a risk. Life is a risk. And there's no amount of coaching that will take away the risk of being alive. That's what it's like to be human. So I feel like I've just answered 7 questions you didn't ask, and maybe poorly only answered the one you did.
No, man, this is great. I'm like, oh, you answered the other 6 that I didn't have to even address to you. You're on a roll, man. And I love all of that. because it's an answer that I often give to people that is unexpected and somewhat unappreciated, which is simply like, no, it's hard. Like having a hard conversation is hard. It's not supposed to be easy. Like, oh, how do you get better at being vulnerable? It's like, no, you don't. You just, if you're being vulnerable, like it's hard and it kind of sucks and it feels terrifying. But what I've found is that I get more familiar with those sensations and those feelings and those voices in my brain. It's like, oh, this is the part when I want to run away. Like, oh yeah, okay. Oh, this is the terrified little boy in me that's whining. Like, why do we have to do this? It's not a big deal. Oh, yep, there's that voice again, right? And so I find that like the gym, putting in the reps, you get used to the strain of the muscle in the gym. Like, oh, I'm sore. Like, oh, this is me expanding. This is me growing. And I find it's very similar when I have challenging conversations, when I have to open my heart. And I fully appreciate and relate when you said that, like, it's an ongoing process, that you're still doing the work, that there is no kind of plateau or level in which it's all fireflies and rainbow sprinkles, right? The other thing that came up for me was I found from personal experience, when I do have some of these healthier conversations with my partner in particular, that one surprising thing that I discovered was when I am in the basement or the shadow or whatever you described it as, and I'm sharing that tender, raw place, and I'm met completely with love and acceptance and safety, that element in itself is activating. As scary and uncertain and what the fuck is going on? Why is she staring at me so lovingly? It's like adding some terror sauce on the entire terrible moment, if that makes sense. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, and I often think about the relationship I'm in and the connection I have. I feel so I'll use the word graced by it so often, because I really think it's pretty rare for two people to meet one another there. It requires an immense amount from both people, right? And I think sometimes you find this in parenting. I got 4 kids, as I was mentioning, in off air, and I think that parents often have a choice how they want to meet authenticity in their kids. Like I have a soon-to-be 16-year-old, and recently he said, "Dad, can I be honest with you?" And I said, "Yes." And I'm thrilled you finally made the choice to be honest. And I think we need to reinforce one another for taking those courageous leaps. The second statement I made to him was, and I want you to know that I want the same permission where I can be honest with you. And what that means is that your honesty is going to impact me, right? I'm going to be impacted by it. And I'm going to have some emotions here. I'm going to have some feelings here, right? And so we give one another the permission to meet each other in that place of authenticity. I'm not going to give you a complete pass on what you share. Last night, my partner shared something. I lead a seasonal men's group called The Rope, and really beautiful time of transformational brotherhood. We had our first meeting of the cycle last night. I was very exhausted at the end of it. And my partner brought up some truths after I'd come to bed. And I'm like, well, God. And so I sit there and I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, you're laughing, right? Because you get it. You're like, oh, okay, this is the wrong time to be talking about that.
I completely relate to this experience. It's like, it's 11:30. I'm just about to fall asleep. It's like, hey, do you have a minute? I'm like, here we go.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Right. And so actually, you know what I did? I said, well, I kind of want to notice the vulnerability issues that I'm bringing into this. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I didn't actually eat dinner. We're jet lagging. You've got some vulnerabilities that I'm sure that you'd be willing to name too. We're both coming into this conversation. So let's just be honest about the environment that we're walking into. Now, what was it that you wanted to share? And so she did. And I had a human response. Like, what she said actually brought up real feelings in me, right? And I said, well, first of all, I just want to tell you, I'm so grateful that you shared it with me and that you valued our connection enough to be authentic with me, to not hide your thoughts and your emotions and your experiences from me, but to step into them with me. So I really value that. Second of all, I want to let you know that I'm really pissed off about it. And, you know, it's like, I think that is a place of full authenticity, where we can both value deep connection and reward one another for deeply connecting in those ways and still have our experience. So I think that's one of the, you know, if I say a pro tip, like one of the pro tips, I'm always thinking, how can I be both fair to them and fair to myself in this moment? Like, I want to keep both in view. And I probably want to do that out loud. Like, hey, I'm letting you know that I'm working really hard to be fair to you in this moment and fair to me. Like, no good deed should go unrewarded. So I'm definitely like tooting my own horn to make sure that she knows I'm working real hard here to like create this moment. Strangely, that goes a long way, and she doesn't kick me out of bed. And I feel graced by that. I think sometimes we create these partnerships, we create these relationships, connections, friendships, whatever they are, that are incredibly fragile, right? They are those castles and kingdoms in the sky. So when it comes time to be authentic or honest, they do fall apart, right? Like, what did Mary Poppins say? Like, I don't make pie crust promises that fall apart when the wind blows. Yeah, most of us have. Like, and when the wind blows, the pie crust promise falls apart. That's right, Mary Poppins. I feel like I have listed some really great and obscure references in this conversation.
Brother, I did not have Rainier quoting Mary Poppins on my bingo card for this podcast episode. Yeah, particularly
Never happened.
So then, I mean, just to continue this amazing entry point, how does one create stronger pie crusts in relationship? How do you create that strength to weather the storms, to face the genuine truth, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, you know, the Greek axiom that sits over the Oracle of Delphi, to thine own self be true, or know thyself, right? These concepts are terribly important. The first thing is know yourself. The work of relating starts like 600 feet before relating. Know yourself, right? Like, know what you want. And so going back to that conversation with this gentleman who I'd been mentoring, who, you know, it's like, well, I really want to be in connection. I want to settle down. I want to have, you know, actually after I challenged him and said, is that really what you want? Because you get a lot out of this other stuff. You know, what's great is he looked at that and goes, oh, I do get a lot out of playing the field. That's funny. I don't actually want to settle down. Fantastic. And he said, it just took a weight off me. It took like a burden off of me, he said. And I think that's really the way it is. Most of us are, as I said, those cover-up jobs, replaying these stories from our parents or social structures, whether it's religion or the state, where we're just kind of parroting what we're supposed to want, right? And once we can dial down to what it is we truly wish in life, I think that's an important place. You know, I think a lot about some of these ancient stories. Aladdin by Disney is one of those ancient stories that I've been forced to watch multiple times with my kids. But it's actually a really old story. It's a Sufi wisdom story of this boy named, well, we call him Aladdin, but Aladdin, who goes into a cave of wonders filled with treasures, filled with every potential gem and gold piece and all these things. And he's looking for all these things that he wants. And he finds this lamp. And in this lamp is a mysterious figure who can grant him 3 wishes. And instantly right there, the Sufi wisdom tradition is drawing a distinction for us between wants and wishes. And what they're actually saying in the Arabic word for wish really is far closer to the word for will or force. That there are some things in life that you only get a few of. There are some things in life that are so deeply connected to your life force that aren't like the rest of the Cave of Wonders. In fact, if you touch the Cave of Wonders, and certainly with any degree of repetition, it'll cave in on you, right? Which is exactly the story of the cave there. But the pearl of greatest price, the lamp itself, the wish is so precious. You only get a few of them. And so one of the things I try and do, whether it's with myself or with others, is ask, what is it you wish? What is this thing that you're willing to only have a few of in life, to only give so much, to give all of yourself, so to speak, to this one thing? What is it? What is it? Because we can want all the other stuff. Those are nice things. Those are good things. But don't spend your life grabbing for them. It'll cave in on you. What's the one thing, 2 or 3 at tops over a lifetime that you'll spend aiming for? And once you know that, you begin to know yourself at a very gritty level. Like, this is actually what I want. This is what it's not just like values. It's like so much deeper than that. Like, this is what I am organized around. And when we begin to do that, it prepares us for relationships so much better, because we go into the relationship, like, think about my hypothetical friend here, this person I mentor. Well, now he knows he likes to play the field. So he goes into a connection, and it's like, well, what he's not talking about is the white picket fence and the 2.3 children and, the Tesla parked in the driveway. Like, he's not talking about that. He's saying, like, hey, I may not call you next week, turns out. Right? Like, that's what I'm about. So I just want you to know. So he's now beginning from a place of very authentic connection. What happens next is 100% her choice. She may look at him and say, whoa, I'm not into that kind of guy. I only date white picket fence boys, right? You need to change your Tinder profile to match that, because I didn't think you were that, right? So whatever it is, but now he's created a real choice in her. But maybe she looks at him and she says, hey, wow, I'm actually the same way. I love playing the field. This is fantastic. I don't have to call you tomorrow. This is great. This is so exciting. And so now a real relationship, a real connection can happen. And that's the basis. Now, I still maintain you'll probably go through all those same phases of union and collusion. You'll probably still hit all of those places. But I think that you'll be set up much better, having come from a place of knowing exactly what it is you wish and knowing who you are going into it.
Mm. Yeah. The thing that jumped out at me just then was that individual who goes on a date and says, I'm not looking for anything serious. I just want to do cocaine and have one night stands. And like, this is what I'm about, hypothetically. Like, they're still in, right. They're in integrity, right? That's right. They're still operating from a place of very high integrity. And they're being honest, they're being open, they're being, truthful, while the choices might be regarded by much of society or their family or friends or whatever as bad or poor or immature or whatever. They're still operating a place of very high integrity. And I think that is kind of the underlying thing that you were getting at, right? Is just like, who are you? What do you want? Own that shit. And then go and live in a way that reflects that kind of stake in the ground.
That's it. Live who you are intentionally. I mean, that's purpose, right? Purpose is knowing who you are and living it with any degree of intentionality. It's waking up in the morning and saying, there's no distinction between the words that are coming out of my mouth, the sounds I'm making with my mouth, and who I am at a cellular level. There's no distinction, right? This is what I want. This is what I'm about. This is what I wish, right? And someone can respond to that and say, well, I don't want that. That's great. I'll find my people. I'll keep moving forward. Yeah. Right. But that's someone who's in, as you said, integrity. That's someone who's congruent with reality. That's someone who's living life in the now. And the privilege of that is that when you find your people, you really find them. Like, you do. Right. And I'm sure that you can relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, in addition to that, I find that my antenna for deciphering whether those people are putting out the frequency that I'm on or not is significantly sharpened. It's like, We talked about this before we started recording, where I was like, yeah, man, I saw your Instagram profile. I read a couple of your posts and I was like, I could be friends with this guy. Like we could hang out. And I feel like it's because of that exposure to years and years of iterations of trying to make something work, but it wasn't. And then discovering who I actually am and what I'm really passionate about and how I want to live my life. It's like, then when you find the square peg for the square hole, it's like, oh, this is fit, done, easy, game over, let's go.
Right.
It's like when you, I guess to sum that up, it's like when you get better at saying no to the no's, you get better at saying yes to the yeses.
That's it. And, you know, we had talked right before about how recently I've kind of been organizing my team in a bit better way. I hired an assistant. I ended up bringing some people on from financial and legal advisement. In both cases, there was a really funny set of interactions. My assistant, we had talked, and I just had a really great sense of her. Like I'm like, yeah, this is the person. And she said, well, don't you need to know more? Like, don't you need? I said, no, you're my assistant. Like, I get it. I'm hiring you. She's like, well, like, do you want to like think about these things? Like, here's something. And I'm like, no, this is it. And same thing. I was hiring a bookkeeper, and she kind of tells me a little bit of what she's about. We talked for about 30 minutes, and I have a very good sense of her. Like, I've interacted with these kinds of folks enough where I'm like, yeah, you're it. And I say that. I'm like, awesome, let's do it. This is so good. And she's like, well, do you want me to send my references? I'm like, what more do you need to know? I'm like, no, I think you missed it. You're it. Yeah, you're on the team. You're hired. And she's like, wow, that is not how I have seen business done in the past. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm okay with that. And so I think that it's exactly what you're saying, whether it's, professionally or personally. Yeah. Like, and I feel like one of the reasons why I know is because I failed so much. And that's like the stock answer that I just almost have to build in all the time. Cause like, God, if I have anything to say these days, it's because I've just like fallen on my face like 1,000 times. And I give myself full license to do it again, right? Like, like that's not what being human is about. Because I don't want to draw a distinction. I don't want to say like, well, I'm just being human, and that means being pretty shitty, right? That's not actually like what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the full range of human life it includes failure. And are we listening? Are we failing forwards? And I think that we can gain a lot of wisdom as we go forwards, but it's simply just responding to life as it is.
Yeah.
That's going to take you some amazing places.
I can't recall the origin of this story or meme or whatever it was, but it was like, where does wisdom come from? It comes from bad decisions. Or no, it comes from good decisions. And then where does good decisions come from? Oh, that comes from bad decisions, right? And so it's this cyclical nature of you fail, then you make better decisions, then you get a little bit wiser. And then you continue to make some poor choices, you get a little bit wiser, right? But actually, Rainier, that relates to one of the 4 notes that I have about you on my little note card here. So on your website, you have a quote from Blake that says, the path of success leads to the palace of wisdom. Oh, sorry, the path of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. And I was like, I gotta know why he chose that quote. I'm sure there's a story or two there.
First of all, I love Blake. And, I think I'll read some of his poetry or some of his work, and I will just think, God, this crazy mad genius has a place in my mind. And he captured it. So I think that's just, I was looking for an entry point to just quote him, because that makes me sound better and look good. And so I was really excited to do that.
More handsome. Yeah.
Right. Like, who quotes Blake anymore? Right. This is so fantastic. No, I mean, the truth of it is someone recently said, hey, you said something about like failing at a previous career. Like, what was that? It was great. It was like a new follower, and that was their like lead-in question. I'm like, that's great. I love your lead-in. Good morning also works. And you know, but my response to them was this: like, which one of my 32 failed careers are you talking about? Because honestly, like I can pick any number of this. You know, even recently someone said, like, what's your story? And I'm like, oh, that's such an interesting question, right? That imagines there's a silver thread. There's a through line here. Let's start my story at 11 and end it at 13. And that's going to be really interesting to talk about, right? There's a lot of stories built in. But to that point of excess, you know, I think one of the things that's really true is I've done a lot, right? So whether it was like a manager in a Fortune 500 company or I was a real estate agent, I did a lot of speculative real estate, which I lost in the 2008 bubble. I made a shit ton of money and burned it up. I've certainly had wives and lovers and been unfaithful and been faithful. I've looked at love from both sides, to quote Joni Mitchell. I've had a slew of certifications and master's degrees, none of which I do anything with today. I've been a pastor, a spiritual director, a therapist, a graduate school professor. I don't do anything like that now. I've been a musician. I was a touring singer-songwriter, a floor layer for 2 years of my life, where I just blood and sweat came out of me, and I was surrounded by warrior culture. I think that so much of my life has been spent living excessively. And probably the truth is, I remember at a very early age thinking this thought, I want to have really lived. Like, I don't want to miss anything. In fact, I tattooed on my leg in Elvish.
Stop it.
wherever this story goes, it's already
Stop
good.
it.
I tattooed on my leg words that are incredibly meaningful to me in English, although the Elvish does look pretty. And at a stage when I was 21, right as Lord of the Rings came out, it seemed like a great idea and conversation starter. But these words mean so much to me. No regrets, no reserves, no retreats. And those words actually come from an interesting story I heard a lot as a boy. My father was a televangelist. And I was raised going to camp meetings and revival meetings and radio stations and churches, all these things, and hearing my father, just tremendous orator, deliver these very inspiring messages of for him, it was social justice and self-empowerment. Very incredible childhood I had, in some ways, listening to really one of the last classical oratory vocations that exist. So I felt like I sat at the feet of giants. One of the stories he would share was about a gentleman named William Borden, who was the heir to the Borden milk fortune, which is a milk company on the East Coast. Lived in the early 1900s, and he got in his mind that rather than take over the business, that he would give away his inheritance and book a steamliner right after he had graduated from doctoral medical school to go to Calcutta, India, to become a doctor and work with the city's poor. And so he boards the steamliner. He's 25 years old, gives away his inheritance. He's risked it all. At a stop in Madagascar, he contracts tuberculosis. He's very fast acting. Before he ever makes it to India, complications happen and he dies. This young man who's risked it all going to a place he never arrives at. And the last words in his journal, of which he wrote to God, to the divine, which I think exemplifies his own deep sense of purpose, was, "Lord, I have given you everything and can say I have lived a life of no regrets, no reserves, and no retreats." And I remember being a boy and hearing that and knowing that I needed to live in what Billy Corgan called the resolute urgency of now, right? that I needed to live a life of no regrets and no reserves and no retreats. The other people might have choices, but I didn't have a choice. I wanted to live like one of those people. And so I feel like I've tried to rack up mileage. You know, I'm only 40, but I look at the life I've lived and I say, wow, I've lived lifetimes. So you ask about the path of excesses, a lot of failures. And sometimes I share that story, particularly around good friends, old friends, or my partner. My partner is really good to say, and there was a cost to the people around you. Yeah, you can't live like the character in someone else's novel, right? And not expect others to bear the tremendous costs of your full aliveness. If I do have a regret, it's that. Sometimes we don't take others into account enough. I don't think I have. So in that journey, in that process, God, not only have I been hurt, but I've hurt people. And that's a reality. And I think part of where I stand today is I take responsibility for that. It doesn't mean I flagellate and beat myself up over it. It just means to say, no, I did that. I did it. And I would do it over differently. And here's how I'm doing it today. What can I do to right this wrong and move forward? And I think that's a lot of what I do these days. And I think that's, for me, what Blake means, at least in my own life. The paths of excess lead to the palaces of wisdom. If wisdom can be defined not just as knowing more, but as knowing more with more of yourself, the older we get, the more we go through these successive stages of development where we surrender our soul to the holocaust of living, right? And we're consumed in the fire over and over and over. And what happens is that we're reincarnated 1,000 times. And as Rilke said, thus I begin, thus have I begun 1,000 lives. And I think that's really what wisdom for me is about. It's beginning again, knowing just a little bit more than I did before.
Well, that was fucking well said, my friend.
Again, the Word document.
Yeah, that was really poetic. That was, you must have a good editor on that one. I love that. I think it's beautiful and tender, and also just an invitation to an adventurous existence, right? The idea that there's just always something else to learn, to be, to become, to excavate is a recipe, in my opinion, for just a fun life. Is like it's an alive life, right? Mm-hmm. I'm conscious of your time and your life, so I feel like this is probably a good spot to end. Although I feel like I could sit and jam with you for another hour quite easily and happily. But
yeah, me too.
For those who are listening, where can they get more of you? You're on the Instagram. I know you have a website.
I am on the Instagram, Rainier Wylde. I'm sure that if you do show notes for that, they're Rainier Wylde at Instagram, and then rainierwylde.com. They can find me and connect with some of my writings there, some of the podcasts I've been on. And really the primary place to find me is Instagram. You know, the primary way I define myself these days is a writer, and the single largest place that I do my editorial column every day is on Instagram. So they'll get a daily meditation from me, usually most days there.
Yeah. And they'll get to actually unpack my description at the beginning of you being a mysterious Midwestern mystic kind of dude with the beard and the tats and the rings and the hat. Like you've got the vibe, man.
It's true, man. It's true. We'll see how I reincarnate in the next life, you know, like in 3 months.
Or tomorrow, right? You never know.
Tomorrow I'll take off the beard mask. Thank you so much, man.
No, it was
I really
a pleasure.
appreciate it.
This was a sincere treat. I really enjoyed conversing with you, man, and look forward to doing it one day in person and in real life. Yeah.
Thank you again. Yeah, please, those of you who are listening, if you want to connect, reach out. It's me who's operating it. I'm not big time. There's no shtick. I would love to interact with you.
Do you ever get those like messages or emails that are like, "Dear Team Rainier"? Like I get those as well. Like, "Dear Jeremy's assistant," and I'm like, that's adorable. That's so adorable.
Like, yes, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
It's so funny. My assistant actually. And it's so nice to be able to say I do have one, but like, like operating on a very, very limited budget. Like, she's like, I don't know if I feel comfortable like having access to the Instagram account. She's like, I'm just gonna let you be you on that, and like you can just answer your own messages. I'm like, that sounds like a great strategy. So you will get me on there. There's not a team of us as the voice of Rainier. And would love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your story and hear how maybe these stories have impacted your life.
Yeah. I mean, brother, there is so much wisdom and ideas jam-packed into that last hour. I'm sure that, I hope that you do get a couple messages from people saying, "Hey, I heard you on the Love Bombs podcast and I'm messaging you. You're fucking awesome. And I just had to see your beard. Thanks for all you do."
I'd love that. I hope so too.
All right, brother. I'm gonna head out, but thank you again. It was a treat, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
So that was Rainier Wylde. You can find him on Instagram and online. I've included links to those things in the show notes. And wow, get in this man's bubble. Find him, slurp his knowledge up with a spoon into your soul, and really dive into some of what just happened. I appreciate you. I adore you. I thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing this with your friends and family. Thanks for sharing it on Instagram. And if you're new here, why not check out the old episodes? There are more than 100, and many of them are with people that you probably do follow on social media, but haven't realized it yet. So have a scroll through, check out the titles. Perhaps a question or topic is now relevant where previously it was not. There's so much information in these conversations. So I hope you do dive into that, share it with people that need it. 5-star reviews are always appreciated, as are you. I really appreciate that you're listening to my voice right now. You're wonderful. Thank you for the support, and I will talk to you soon.